Hey, good to see you.
You as well.
So I am starting back up to study for my IM shelf exam.
Okay.
I had a little bit of some time off after OB-GYN,
Sure.
and so just wanted to get back on the horse and start strong. So I was wondering what approach should I do? I've been doing some UWorld questions, but I've been having a hard time getting through them in a timely manner. And I was doing some Anki just to get that repetition since there's so much information.
Sure.
But I feel like, as usual, I could probably use your advice and your protocol to kind of move forward through it.
Sure. Absolutely. So, looking to develop the optimum protocol for approaching the exam. All right. So, a few questions I have. You said you've done some UWorld. Where are you scoring approximately, plus or minus 5 to 10%?
Ranging from 35% to my first 70%. But
Okay.
mostly, I think I stick around on like a 50, 45, 50 is like more common.
Okay. That's super helpful. So, what that tells me is you mentioned that it was taking you a little bit too long with your questions. And there's a very, very good reason for that. So, number one is obviously there's the protocols for how to actually read the question and review it and all that kind of stuff. But all things aside, if your content base is on the lower end of things going into the questions are going to seem almost like a dreadful task. And I'm sure you probably have been there, even if it's not for this specific shelf, you probably felt that at some point or another, as we all have. So whenever I hear a student tell me like, all right, I have a big score variance, so that's number one. So things to consider when studying for shelf exams. So if you have a large score variance on your UWorld questions, so this is anywhere from 20 to 40% difference between blocks. This means the inconsistency of your scoring is due to a weaker content base in some select areas. Obviously, if you get a block that's like all cardio and you've reviewed cardio recently, then those might be your 70% block. And then if you get something that's like a mix of GI and hematology and oncology and stuff that you may have not seen in a while, then you end up with some 35s. So what that tells me is that you do have some substantial differences in the strengths, most likely, between your different sections. And that's very fixable, right? That's super normal. All right. So that's number one. So let me just space this out so it's easy to read for anybody hopping in later here. All right. Number two is if scoring less than 55 to 60%, especially on your first run through of this content block, then that tells me as well that you should place a stronger emphasis on your content. And that I'm going to put two words here in all caps for now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so the thing to keep in mind is just because you're scoring less than that right now doesn't mean that that cannot change, obviously. So don't let that get you down. And I'm all for smashing through questions, but if it's taking you hours and hours to review your questions, like if you break it down to a 40 question block, if it's taking you more than 3.5 to 4 hours to review those 40 questions, then that tells me that there's just so much within the explanations that you don't know that it's not supremely beneficial for you at this time to be doing questions yet. Okay, so let's say how to combat the above. So basically, as you can kind of get the gist from what I'm saying right now, obviously this is coming down to a content issue. Would you agree?
Yes, because I'm taking way too long with reviews and talking too long with AI to figure out where my content holes are.
Yes, I totally get that. And that is the last thing you want to be doing right now because that just leads to you taking super long, right? For me personally, and this is by no means something set in stone, but if you need to use AI when you're going through your questions, that tells me that we just need to hit the basics, right? Because the explanations are pretty solid in UWorld. And if they're not scratching that itch for you, then that tells me that we just need to build your basics. Think of it as like kind of the building blocks of the fortress, right?
Right.
If you're missing your roof, then everything inside is going to get wet. And it's kind of like, well, if you're trying to patch your roof with AI, then that just tells me we need to build a stronger roof. Does that make sense? I know it's kind of a crazy analogy.
That makes sense.
All right, so let's think about how to do this. So a couple things that I want to mention. So here's a high yield note for you. Cardiology is 15% of your IM shelf exam. So these are guaranteed points if you know it well. Obviously, you always want to think about what's the 80-20, right? Like, you know, the Pareto law of what's the 80% that I can dedicate, that I can get the most results from by focusing on the 20%.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the 20% is more like a 15 here for cardiology, but the rule still applies. So that's obviously one area of huge importance, because not just cardiology, but the cardiology bleeds into pulmonary and bleeds into renal. And these three systems will get you like literally over a third of your points on the IM shelf. Okay, so that's going to be, let me just make a note of that. So cardiology bleeds into renal and pulmonary. This will get you over 1/3 of the points for your IM shelf exam. So, I mean, just think about it like from a holistic global picture here. If I tell you, hey, Natasha, I'm going to get you 1/3 of the points for your IM shelf right now, if you do these three things, like that makes it very, very tangible. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes.
So that's the way I want you to think about that. So that's high yield note number one. And so the next thing that I want you to do, so let's do an order of operations here. So step one is to note that. Step two, actually, that's going to be confusing if I do it like this. Let me just do it numbered blocks like this. So that's number one. Here's number two. I want you to watch in this order to get your content based. All right, so number one is going to be Emma Holiday on YouTube. All right, so pros is this is going to boost your knowledge really quickly with pretty much only high yield, info and no fluff. The con is going to be it's slightly outdated. Okay, so I still think it's, even in this day and age, it's still super worth it, because you can do this literally while you're in your car, while you're driving, while you're showering. You can get through her video very, very easily. So that's the first thing I want you to do. And so I want you to watch this on 1.25x speed.
Okay.
All right, the next thing I want you to do, and so this will obviously take you 1 day, less than 1 day. All right, so this is going to be day one. Day two, I want you to review Emma Holiday PowerPoint from yesterday's lecture. Okay. And obviously in the rest of your day, you can still be doing your questions. You can still be reviewing any weak points, but this is the structure that I want you to do. That way that you're not slamming so much all at once that it's overwhelming, but that way that it's like, okay, if I got to go through this twice today just to make sure I really got it all down, then you have ample time to do it. All right, day three, I want you to go through the Emma Holiday on YouTube, watch on 1.5x speed. So you've seen it now 3 times in 3 days. You're never going to need to watch it again. And that's not to say you're not going to forget something from this, but you're going to see the contents on this in later resources as well. So you don't have to worry about going back to anything that's outdated at this point.
Okay.
Okay. So, and when I say it's outdated, I mean, it's like maybe there's 1 or 2 facts in the PowerPoint that are second line now that were first line. Like it's basically not a big deal. Day 4, what I want you to do is to go through the Divine Intervention episode 29. Day 5 is the Divine Intervention episode 30. Day 6 is going to be Divine Intervention episode 31. Day 7 is Divine Intervention episode 32. Okay. I'm not super set on you doing this only one thing per day, but this is like worst case scenario. If you think that you can get through 2 or 3 of these in 1 day, then that's fine. But this is like worst case scenario if this is the only thing you have time to do for those specific days. Does that make sense?
Yes. With questions as well, right?
Yes. You're not probably going to be able to keep the same volume of questions you've been doing. Cut it in half. That's fine.
Okay. And should I do targeted questions while I do these videos?
For your situation, I would say yes.
Okay.
So I would go through based upon percentage of the highest yield for this exam. So I'd have to pull up the exact numbers and percents for everything. But for example, has 15% cardio. I think it's like 12% MSK. But basically just go from top down.
Okay.
And then day 8 is going to be farm. All right. And so there's a lot of farm that shows up on your internal medicine shelf exam. And so I want you to use Sketchy Farm to go through the antiarrhythmics, the vasoactive drugs, the anticoagulants, and the thrombolytics. Okay. Those are the ones that are kind of like the easiest to get mixed up that I've found. And they're also, again, cardio for this obvious reason. Okay. And so day 9 is I want you to do the secret archives, internal medicine. So day 9 until exam, I want you to do the secret archives, internal medicine videos. And there's a lot. I mean, you probably have seen them. So let me go into here. Give me 1 second. I'll pull this through. It's going to be, I want to say ballpark-ish, like 7 hours.
Okay.
So it's like that.
Okay.
Okay. And the reason I say day 9 until exam is because these are up to date with what's tested on your exam, like literally right now. And I update them as new things come out. And so everything in there should be basically free points for you on your test. So you can do 1 per day, you can do 2 per day, however much that you have time to get through. I want you to get through them a minimum of 2 times.
2 times each video, mark it.
Yep. And remind me, how many days into your IM shelf?
They didn't give me a date. I was just trying to do it as soon as possible. And so I think I can probably double up on some of these, like do the 2 defines 1 day questions. Yep. So this is doable.
That'd be perfect. And then so day 10 until exam, focus on UWorld using reverse pyramid. You will likely be scoring consistently greater than 60% at this time. So if we give it about 10 days, I am pretty confident that your score variance, the band will tighten down, and also your knowledge will be consistently scoring in that 60+ range. And so now you'll be able to go through questions much faster, because it's not like you're going from, maybe let's say you gain 15 to 20% of knowledge. Okay, that's not like saying it's only 15 to 20%. It's like now that 15 to 20% is much easier. Plus the stuff you were guessing on before, you now are also getting that right. So even though your score only moves a bit, now you're answering with more confidence. So the review process literally will cut in half. Okay. So I can estimate, like right now, let's say it's taking you 5 hours to get through a block of 40 questions to review. You could probably cut that down to 3 hours after this.
Amazing.
So that should substantially help speed up your process. This is exactly what I would do if I was in your shoes. If you can get through multiple of these videos in 1 day, then by all means. Obviously, don't spend like 8 hours on content, because you're not going to retain that much. You got to switch up your study modalities a little bit. Mm-hmm. But anything up to about 4 hours of content I've found is a pretty reasonable sweet spot before that you start having degradation of the retention.
Okay. Perfect. I'll do this. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Absolutely. This was one of those kind of things. It's like ask and ye shall receive type of deal.
Much appreciated.
Absolutely. So rule of thumb is keep content ideally to less than 4 hours per day when studying for shelf exams, and fill the remainder of your day with practice questions. Any more than 4 hours per day can lead to retention degradation due to overwhelm of one singular learning modality. Passive review of this. And also, one thing I want to note on this, and I think it's an important note, not that I want to change anything that I just told you, but just so you keep in mind, you can do more than 4 hours of content in a day, but if you do, then you need to do it in a different learning modality. And so what does that mean? That means if you're watching videos, you can't watch 8 hours of video and ever hope to retain that for more than a couple days. I mean, just let's be honest here. And it's not like you want to memorize this for like one day. Like, you want to know this stuff. If you're quizzing with a partner, that can speed it up and also allow you to compress more than 4 hours into one day. So you could do maybe 6 hours, no problem. If you're doing flashcards, that's another option that creates a little bit more of an active retention. But one thing I want you to keep in mind that I told a student this yesterday, actually, using Anki ad nauseum can become a problem because now you're getting bits and pieces of the whole picture rather than the actual picture. And so sure, you might know those bits and pieces well, but then you lose almost the forest for the trees and you start forgetting how everything ties together because you put so much emphasis on the brute force memorization. So in that regard, Anki actually can be beneficial if you want to implement it. Do it in small doses. I wouldn't do it more than 30 to 60 minutes per day right now. But it would actually be even more useful for you after this content crash course because now you've seen the big picture. Like, if you know everything that you go through in these 10 days, you could pass your IM shelf with just this content. Obviously, you need to see how to apply it. You need to be able to utilize the knowledge and leverage it. But this is going to get you like a huge percentage of the way there. Let's just say if you had a photographic memory and you could pull from all this data, boom, you got it. You're going to pass your IM shelf without a doubt. So at that point, then it just becomes practice.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I was only using the Anki whenever I do the UWorld questions and just pulling only those Anki.
Sure.
I figured since I'm reviewing it, then I should at least know it, the Anki question.
That's fair, as long as you're just not dedicating like huge percentages of your day to it. Because I know some students get super overwhelmed with having like 5,000 cards that they got to get through in one weekend, and then it just becomes overwhelming, and then it's like almost useless at that point. It defeats the purpose.
Got it. Okay.
Great questions. So I'll say don't spend over 30 to 60 minutes on Anki per day, as it can become overwhelming, and that learning modality fatigues very easily over the long term. This rule does not apply if you are using Anki as a crash course immediately prior to your USMLE Step 2 exam, for example. So if you go into school and you actually look at my rules for Anki, I have kind of like a little breakdown of when I feel that Anki can be really beneficial prior to your Step 2 exam. And you can use it as a speed reading resource. So it's not for the spaced repetition in that regard. But if you want to be like, okay, here's a fact, here's a fact, here's a fact, here's a fact, and you want to speed read, that's really super useful after you've already built your fortress, you built the roof like we talked about, you filled in all the holes, you've done your practice questions, and now you just need everything to be quote unquote fresh in your mind. That's an extremely valuable usage of your Anki. And in fact, I did that, and I felt it literally got me an extra 5 to 10 points. Because it's just like, oh yeah, I remember seeing this 2 days ago. Boom, I got it now. You know what I mean? Like, that's extremely valuable, but nobody uses it that way. Like, Anki is super advertised for the spaced repetition, but I don't think that that is even the only way that you should be using it, right? Like, I'm not a huge Anki fan. Like, I use it when it's needed. I think it's useful when it's needed, but it's not something that should be used as a crutch, in my opinion. And a lot of people do that. Like, whether, I'm not saying you, I'm just saying in general, whether it's for class lectures, whether it's for memorizing like sketchies and stuff like that, like that's not, it doesn't need to be used for that. Use it for stuff that's actually tricky for you to retain, stuff that requires brute force memorization. But something like heart failure, understanding the pathophys of that does not require memorization. It requires understanding. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And you were saying that part about how what Anki is useful, it's under where for classroom?
If you go to classroom, then type it, then hit the one that says the boards, and then click on resources to use. It should be one of the tabs under there, I believe.
Got it. Yes, Anki. Anki walkthrough and Anki. Perfect. Thank you.
There you go. Absolutely. Great questions.